In the fall of 2019, my wife and I bought into the Disney Vacation Club. And in this video, 6 years later, I'll tell you how many points we purchased, how much in total it cost us. I'll discuss, was it worth it? Have we saved money? Have we lost money? And more importantly, would we do it again? And by the end of this video, you'll know which families should avoid Disney Vacation Club at all costs. But you'll also know which families are losing money by not signing up as soon as possible. And if you find yourself in that latter category, at the end of this video, I'll tell you how you can save an additional $500 on top of their regular discounts that they usually provide. If you're not familiar with Disney's Vacation Club, henceforth in this video called DVC, it's basically Disney's version of a timeshare. What makes it different than your typical timeshare is the location. It's not that you're just in Walt Disney World, but you can use your DVC to stay in Disneyland, stays in Disney hotels in Hawaii, Hilton Head Island, Vero Beach, their Disney Cruise Lines, and many other places all around the world. As I mentioned in 2019, we bought 300 points. We purchased them because we realized it was essentially 7 years after our first trip with Disney World when our daughter was 2 years old, and we basically had been going annually ever since. On each subsequent trip, we were exposed to what appeared to be the benefits of DVC with increasing frequency, and in 2019, we finally succumbed to the peer pressure. In 2019, to purchase 300 points, it cost us a total of $47,000. After all the taxes and fees, our per point cost was $156. At that time, my wife and I ended up doing the Disney-based financing, which was basically a 10-year loan. We told ourselves we were going to work to pay it off early, and that's what we did, paying it off after about 4 years. And here's one of the points. It's really crucial to pay this loan off early because the Disney-based financing and their interest rates weren't that great then, and I can't imagine what their interest rates are now. So to understand the value of DVC, or potentially the lack thereof, you need to know what 300 points will actually get you. There are minor things like discounts on food, merchandise, and tickets, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to stick with the major points, and that's really how often can you use your DVC contract to go to Walt Disney World. The way the DVC system works is every year you are allowed to use the amount of points that you purchase. So for us, every year we get 300 points. So to really give you an idea, I'm going to show you their point system in one of their newest resorts and one of their oldest resorts so you have a better idea of what I mean. So for example, here is Sarasota Springs, one of my favorite resorts. You can see it's divided up into their deluxe studio, the 1-bedroom villa, the 2-bedroom villa, 3-bedroom, and they also have tree houses. So taking a look at this chart, if I wanted to go at any point during the month of September, staying during the week at one of their deluxe studios, it would cost me 9 points a night. If I wanted to stay in a 1-bedroom villa, it's 21 points a night. A 2-bedroom villa would be 27 points a night. A 3-bedroom villa, that would be 63 points a night. So getting back to the chart, you can see the weekly rate for staying at Saratoga Springs is 73 points. If you go in a more crowded time of year, it's going to cost you more points. So here in the middle of July to stay at Saratoga Springs, it would cost you 102 points. Using this chart, I could go for a week in November, a week in June, and a week in September using my 300 points, and it wouldn't really cost me anything because I've already paid in the DVC. I'm paying with points now that I bought 5 years ago. I don't have to pay $1. To stay at one of their newer resorts like the Riviera, you're going to have to use a few more points, but still, beginning of September, any week in September, I can stay the entire week, 104 points. I can go for the entire week during Christmas, their most popular time of the year, and it would cost me 200 points, leaving me essentially another 100 points that I can use any other time of year. So that's another one of the benefits of the DVC. You can use all your points all up at one time for one huge vacation, stay in a big 3-bedroom villa, bring your entire family, parents, grandkids like I mentioned, and that's one example of using your points. Or you can split them up, use them at various times of the year, and get multiple vacations out of it. For my family, most of the time we usually split the 300 points to go down several times a year. For example, next year we already have scheduled a 3-night stay at Saratoga Springs. A little bit later we have a 3-night stay in a 1-bedroom villa at Disney's Vero Beach in Florida. The 3-night stay at Saratoga Springs is going to cost us 68 points. The 3-night stay at Vero Beach is going to cost us 129 points. And we still have over 100 points to use later on in the year, in which case we'll probably go at a hotel we haven't stayed at in a while, which will be Disney's Animal Kingdom. We'll get the Savannah views, stay for a week for 97 points, and that's our 300 points. So for next year, we already have planned 2 separate trips to Walt Disney World and a separate trip to Vero Beach, and you know how much out of pocket it's going to cost me? Nothing. Because like I said, technically we paid for all these trips in advance way back in 2019. Okay, now let's really look at the math to see if it was worth it. The nightly rate for a 1-bedroom suite at Vero Beach is about $900, and the nightly rate for Saratoga Springs is $500. So without DVC membership, a 3-night stay at Vero Beach in the 1-bedroom is $2,700, Saratoga Springs is $1,500, Together, of course, that comes out to $4,300. Now you can also see if you were to stay at Animal Kingdom from 1 week, that would cost $4,500. So all total out of pocket next year for somebody who wasn't a DVC member but staying for the same amount of time at the same places I would be staying with, out of pocket it would be $8,700. Now keep in mind, a DVC contract is 50 years. Our initial purchase price was $47,000. If you divide $47,000 divided by 50, that comes out to just under $1,000 a month. So the initial reaction would be, of course DVC is worth it. $1,000 a year versus $8,700? Not that simple. Hold on a second. We haven't talked about the dues. There are annual dues that you have to pay once you sign up for their timeshare. Now the dues will vary from contract to contract depending on the number of points you buy, but for us, the cost of our dues is $2,500 a year. Now $2,500 a year, you are committed to pay for it for the life of the contract. That's 50 years. That comes out to a total of $125,000. So now the math starts to change a little bit. And that's not even the total. That doesn't even include the initial purchase price, which for us at 300 points was $47,000. So all total, when you count the dues over 50 years and our initial purchase price, we have paid for or committed to pay $174,000 over the next 50 years. That's the number you have to be paying attention to, and that's the number I want to compare to my example for next year to really compare apples to apples. So I mentioned our 2 4-day trips and our 1 7-day trip would total $8,700 out of pocket. That's still way better than the $3,480 I would pay every year. So for some families, if you go every year, you're done. The math works out. Buy DVC and buy as soon as possible. But what if you're like most families? Well, maybe you only go every few years. But I realize most families probably don't go at all. But if you're most Disney fan families, you may only go every few years. There's a different math for you guys. Let's say you plan on only going once every 3 years. Well, you really don't have to buy 300 points like we did. You can get away with 100 points, and that cuts all of your math into thirds. Instead of paying $3,400 a year for 50 years, you're only paying $1,160 a year for 50 years. But keep in mind, most of that is your upfront cost in your purchase price. For the 50 years, you're only paying the annual dues, and if you only bought 100 points, it would be less than the $2,500 that my wife and I pay. It would probably be somewhere around $500 to $800. But anyway, for convenience sake, let's say your 50-year math is the $1,160 and you only plan on going every 3 years. $1,160 every 3 years is back to roughly $3,500, and that is still cheaper than the 1 week stay at Animal Kingdom for $4,500. So we've done the math for families that go every year. It's a clear win. You probably should buy as soon as possible. We've done the math for families that go every few years. It's still a pretty clear win. You should probably buy as soon as possible, knowing you don't need as many points. Another thing you can do if you decide you just don't want to go to Walt Disney World that year is you can sell your annual allotment of points. We did that during COVID when not as many people were traveling and there was a lot of restrictions in the park. There were still a lot of people who wanted to travel down there. We didn't. We sold our points to people who wanted to go, and we actually made money that year doing absolutely nothing. Look, I wouldn't buy into DVC for the investment opportunities of it. That's clearly not a win, but it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. So who are the families that shouldn't buy into DVC? Well, the reality is probably most families. But if you're one of those families who's gone for the first time and you go home and are already starting to think about planning your next vacation because you enjoyed it so much, you should probably be considering the Disney Vacation Club. One more thing you should consider is the rising annual cost of going to Walt Disney World. Look at this receipt from 2019 when we stayed at the Contemporary. We had a theme park view and our nightly rate was $895. That was in 2019, and that same room this year costs well over $1,200. Another example is this receipt from 2018 when we stayed at the Polynesian for a theme park view. That room cost me about $650 a night, and that same room this year costs well over $900. So if you were to buy into DVC, you are basically locking in the rate right now, and you don't have to worry about the rising cost of the hotels in the future. The points they use in these charts are contractually obligated to not change over the course of the 50-year contract. A room that cost me 25 points this year is basically going to cost me 25 points 50 years from now. So even if the first few years of buying DVC, you just feel like you're breaking even, you are definitely going to save money in the long run, as it just generally gets more expensive to travel to Disney World. But I can honestly say if you love going to the parks, This is a good deal. I look forward every year to taking my family down there. I'm looking forward to when my kids are grown and my wife and I go down by ourselves. And God willing, I'm looking forward to taking our grandkids down there. It's been a great investment for us. I highly recommend it if you're a fan. But if you are even slightly interested and want way more succinct information, click on the link below. And if you ultimately decide to purchase by using that link, you'll save an additional $500 off your contract. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you next time.